In this video on verbs, we're going to be reviewing problems that happen with verb forms. When we say verb forms, we're meaning how we make or form the verb phrase. This sentence has an example of a verb form error. Maria chose to live in the dormitory. Here's our verb. We know the verb in the infinitive is to choose. And this is an irregular verb. So we cannot just add an ed at the end. We have to change the form altogether to chose with one O. Okay? So this is an example of a verb form error. And in this video, we're going to be reviewing the 6 most common errors that writers make with verb forms. Problem number 1 is that the main verb has been incorrectly formed. We can see in example number 1, my comment hurted my roommate's feelings. Well, hurted again is an irregular verb, so in past tense it remains hurt. In the other one, she flied to Los Angeles for the Chinese New Year. Flied is irregular, or to fly is irregular, so in past tense it should be flew. Okay. Some of the most common main verb forming problems is in the irregular verbs. In these 2 examples, the main verb that is being incorrectly formed is a little different. Here we have it. There are 2 different ways to incorrectly form this verb. I've been studying hard lately, or I studying hard lately. They're not complete. You would have to say I have been studying hard lately. Another example here is also something that is very common. He always read slowly. Okay, so he is third person singular, and third person singular in present tense in a regular verb gets an S. I often mark this on papers as SV, subject-verb agreement. So this problem number 1 is a major problem that interferes with the meaning of what you're trying to say. If you have problems forming these verbs correctly, then you need to make sure to review how to form verbs, particularly irregular past tense form verbs, correctly. Problem number 2 is that the past participle has been formed incorrectly. Remember that the past participle is often thought of as the 3rd verb form. So for example, if you have see, then in past tense it's saw, and in the past participle it's seen. Oops. E-E-N. So that's the past participle, the 3rd form. So let's look at our example here. Ben did not want the teacher to know that he had not studied for the quiz. Here, this verb phrase, Ben did not want, is correct. But here, he had not studied, it is incorrect. He is using past perfect, which is had, plus the past participle. But here, he has not made the past participle. He's only given the base form, so he needs to add the IED to make it the past participle. This is often very common in regular verbs. In spoken English, it's not always easy to hear that ED ending. However, in written English, it still always needs to be there. When you have the past participle, you still need that ED for the regular form. Here is another example sentence. The choir had already sang their last song before I got there. Again, is using past perfect, but sang is not the past participle, it's the past tense. So you need sung. The choir had already sung. Problem number 3 is that the main verb or an adjective has been used incorrectly instead of be plus past participle. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's look at these 2 examples. I confused about what you said. I confused about what you said. Both of these are incorrect. Both of these are using confuse, okay, when it should be used with be and a past participle. So it would be, I am confused with ed about what you said. Here is another example. San Francisco located on the northern coast of California. Located, okay, cannot act as that verb. It has to be San Francisco is located on the northern coast of California. So for this problem, you really want to pay attention if you're using an adjective or looking at the main verb to check and see, do you actually need a form of to be plus the past participle to correctly form it? Problem number 4 is when the auxiliary verb and the main verb are used together when they should not be used together. Let's look at what this means. In example number 1, John failed the test because he did not study enough. John failed is okay. It happened in the past. Because he did not study. Okay, so here's our auxiliary did. Did in simple past with the negative. And this verb that goes after, that matches to make the verb phrase complete, should be the base form. But here, there's a past participle, which is incorrect. It should be, he did not study. Right? So this is the problem that happens frequently. An auxiliary verb is being used with another verb, a main verb, that shouldn't be used. Like it does. That's not how we make the verb form. Another example in number 2, Tina was discouraged because she was not progressed very quickly. Was discouraged is fine. Because she was not progressed is not. Here is our auxiliary, was. Now, was can be used with different main verbs. Often we use a form of to be when we make the progressive forms. But we do not, in an active sentence, use the simple past or the past participle, progressed. So we could change progressed to progressing. She was not progressing. That's one possibility. If we wanted to keep the main verb as progressed, then we could change the auxiliary to had to make it past perfect. She had not progressed very quickly. There are 2 possibilities to correct this sentence. Problem number 5 is when the infinitive has been incorrectly formed. So to remind you, the infinitive is referring to that to plus the base form. Okay, so to eat, to sleep, to go. It could also be to plus have plus the past participle can also be considered the infinitive, like to have slept, to have gone. Let's look at 2 examples. In number 1, Mike often forgets to check his mail on Saturdays. Forgets to checks? No, the infinitive is always just to plus the base form, so there's no S. He often forgets to check his mail on Saturdays. In number 2, it was hard for Naomi to admit it to me that she was wrong. No, right? It was hard for Naomi to admit, just the base form, to me that she was wrong. And finally, problem number 6 is using an incorrect gerund or infinitive. This is perhaps the most difficult problem in verb formation because it's not rule-based. There are no rules you can learn. You just have to remember the pairing. So quickly, let's remind ourselves, we know what infinitive is. It's to plus the base, to sleep. Okay. When we talk about gerunds, we're talking about the ing. So a gerund form would be sleeping. So the problem here is that there are some verbs that only take gerunds or some verbs that only take infinitives, and when we're writing, we mix it up. So for example, in number 1, he decided going to the library tonight. Well, decided is one of those verbs that always takes the infinitive, so we can't use going, we have to use go. He decided to go. Or in example number 2, Matthew avoided to discuss that issue. Avoided is a verb that always takes the gerund, so it has to be Matthew avoided discussing that issue. To make problem number 6 even more problematic for writers, the English language has 4 verbs that do not take gerunds or infinitives. They just take the base form of the verb. And therefore, you just have to remember these 4 verbs don't take a gerund or an infinitive. Have, help, let, and make. Okay, very common verbs. And these instead just take the base form. So if we look at this example number 1 here, the stranger helped me pushed my car to the side of the road. Helped me pushed. So here we have one of our verbs, help, and we can't use the gerund or the infinitive or a past participle. It just has to be the base form, push. The stranger helped me push my car to the side of the road. Okay, so that is a review of the 6 most common errors that writers make when forming verbs. Hopefully now, if someone tells you you have a verb form error, you'll know where to look and you'll have an idea of a better idea of how to fix that error.